an arrest warrant, a disputed election, and a payment offer that shocked the world. July 28, 2024. Venezuelans voted in what many called the most important election in decades. Hours later, the Electoral Council declared Maduro the winner, but something was terribly wrong. They announced results, but refused to show vote tallies. No detailed data, no transparency whatsoever. Opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez claimed he actually won, with over 67% of the vote. The opposition published thousands of voting receipts online, receipts the government refused to release publicly. The United States, European Union, and Latin American countries refused to recognize the results. Within hours, millions took to the streets, the largest protests Venezuela had seen in years. Maduro's government responded with force. Security forces dispersed protesters. Arrests began immediately. At least 25 people died in the protests. Over 2,000 were arrested in the first week alone. September 2024. A Venezuelan court issued an arrest warrant for Gonzalez. The charges: conspiracy and terrorism. Gonzalez fled to Spain, claiming his life was in danger. Spain granted him political asylum immediately. Opposition leader Maria Corina Machado went into hiding. The government had already banned her from running. The United Nations called for full transparency. The OAS condemned the election as fraudulent. Maduro refused to back down. He claimed the election was fair. He called the opposition foreign agents. This crisis came amid Venezuela's economic collapse. Hyperinflation destroyed savings. Shelves stood empty for years. Over 7 million Venezuelans had fled the country, the largest refugee crisis in Latin American history. Then came the shocking offer. Venezuela offered to pay Spain for Gonzalez's extradition, cash for his return. Spain immediately rejected the offer. They called it unprecedented. Political asylum cannot be bought or sold. The military remained loyal to Maduro. Without their support, the government would fall. Venezuela sits on the world's largest proven oil reserves, yet the country couldn't even refine its own gasoline. International sanctions crippled Venezuela's economy. Oil exports collapsed. The regime couldn't access banking systems. This all started with Hugo Chavez. He died in 2013. Maduro was his successor, but never had Chavez's popularity. The Electoral Council members were appointed by Maduro. International observers called it structurally biased from the start. For the first time in years, the opposition united. That's why the government feared them. Each voting machine prints a receipt. The opposition collected these. The government refused to show theirs. The opposition created a website. Anyone could verify the receipts. Over 83% of polling data was uploaded publicly. Venezuela blocked most international election observers. The few allowed in reported serious irregularities. Independent media outlets were shut down. Journalists arrested. State television was the only narrative available. Political prisoners reported torture in Venezuelan jails. Human Rights Watch documented systematic abuse. Brazil, Venezuela's largest neighbor, refused to recognize results. President Lula demanded transparency. Regional isolation grew. Colombia shares a border with Venezuela. President Petro called for new elections. Over 2 million refugees already lived in Colombia. Cuba remained Maduro's strongest ally. Cuban intelligence reportedly helped maintain control. Russia backed Maduro immediately. They had billions invested. Moscow sent military advisors and equipment. China lent Venezuela over $60 billion. Beijing supported Maduro to protect their investment. Hospitals lacked basic supplies. Medicines were unavailable. Thousands died from treatable conditions. Malnutrition became widespread. Children went hungry. Food lines stretched for blocks. The bolivar became worthless. Inflation hit 1,000,000%. Life savings evaporated overnight. Venezuelans abandoned their own currency. They used US dollars. The government unofficially accepted it. Nationwide blackouts became routine. The power grid collapsed. Some areas went weeks without electricity. Running water became a luxury. People collected rainwater. They walked miles to fill containers. Doctors, engineers, teachers fled the country. Venezuela lost its educated middle class. Colombia absorbed over 2 million refugees. The crisis became regional, not just Venezuelan. Criminal gangs filled the power vacuum. Kidnappings surged. Venezuela became one of the world's most violent countries. The government turned to illegal gold mining. Armed groups controlled the mines. Mercury poisoned rivers. U.S. agencies accused Venezuelan officials of drug trafficking. The country became a major cocaine transit route. The opposition used social media to organize. The government tried to block platforms. VPNs became essential. The International Criminal Court opened investigations. They documented torture, killings, and forced disappearances. Today, the standoff continues. Maduro holds power. Gonzalez remains in exile. Venezuela remains divided. Will Venezuela see democracy again? Or will authoritarianism prevail? Millions wait for an answer. The world watches.